person in the value system that brings it up. Some people can change it. Most people don't. They just try to guide what the leaders feel, and they try to become what they call politically correct, tell people what they want to hear, get selected, and then try to put their hand behind like that, say somebody paid me to change my mind. I've seen it. I mean, I've been a superintendent, working with board members. Some were honest, some were absolutely corrupt. I can't call their names, but
Thank you.
I know who they are.
Thank you.
We know who they are.
We're almost winding down to the end. We're in a minute or two. We're going to hear from each of you concluding statements. Just before we get there, I want to say to both of you, we are people from this community, and it's not about a feeling. It's the reality of your coming here and giving your great effort to the point where you have to take off your jacket and handle this now. We know it's something. And you're speaking from your heart. And, you know, this is the thing that gets out. Both of you really represent this community well. And the both of you, I hope, will continue to go forth past the election time. You strive to do the best for the people in this community. We recognize that. I just want to say that there has to be a big thanks. And first, before we give you your applause, we're now going to hear from each of you on your concluding statement. And your concluding statement has to do with your looking at things as they are now. What's one, maybe two things that you can see, this is where you're going to start off. These are major problems, and this is what you're looking at. Genetha? You're representing us well.
Having been on the board before, from 1999 to 2003, I was president of the board from 1999 to 2001. And I knew why I went then, I know why I'm running now. Then, my goal was to get inner city youngsters off of buses. And so it was important to me that we pass bonds so that we could end not only year-round schooling, but so that we could end having our young people standing on a bus stop at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting on a bus at 6, riding 90 minutes, we don't know where, to schools that said we'll take them, not we'll educate them, but schools that said we will take them. If everybody remembers, and I don't know whether anybody is as old as me, I graduated from Dorsey in 1963, so I don't know whether people are of my generation or not. But there was supposed to be two-way busing in Los Angeles. Wound up being one-way busing. George is right. They just sucked our kids into the valley. And then when they didn't like our kids, they sent our kids back. They had their full complement of teachers on our kids' backs, and when they decided that our children were not fitting in, they sent them back to schools that were not a lower number of youngsters, so we had fewer teachers and fewer resources. I don't see that much has changed. So the first thing that I would do when I got there, and I think that's the first thing you have to do when you get elected, you can't wait to get to the first meeting. The first thing that I would do is I would make sure that I understood every line in that budget. Because that is how our schools are under-resourced. I can tell you that. I can tell you that without any equivocation at all in my mind. If you don't understand the budget, if you can't look at those line items, if you can't see where money is hidden, if you don't know how schools are resourced, and it takes you 6 weeks to figure that out, then that budget is set. And in this election, if there is a runoff, the budget has to be signed, and I know that because I was the one who had to sign it. When I was on the school board, I stopped it. I said, what happens if I don't sign the budget? And they said, oh, nobody gets paid. I said, well, then you need to fix these 5 things because I'm not signing the budget. And those 5 things got fixed because everybody wanted to get paid. But if there is a runoff that isn't decided until the 8th of August, we only have 2 more months to fix the budget. So you don't have any 10 months to try to figure out what your priorities are. You only have 2 more months because the budget is a draft budget from July 1 until the 1st of October. We only have that amount of time. So that would be the first thing. The second thing that I would want to make sure of was what happened to that local control funding formula, and how were our schools resourced, and how much money did we get, and what did we get it for, and what did we do? Because unless you can get your head wrapped around resources, unless you really can understand what has happened with the money, everything else is a pipe dream. Everything else, we can wish it, we can fight for it, we can want it, we can die for it. But if it's not in that budget, then it's not a reality. So the two things that need to happen is you got to understand that budget from the minute you get elected. You got to work with other board members if you want to stop a train, because there are 6 other people. You got to get them to come along with you. And you then got to figure out how that local control funding formula. It sounds great.
10 seconds.
But it's going to be the devil is going to be in the details. So those are the things that I would be interested in more than anything else. What is going on with that budget and with that funding, and how do I stop that train? Because it's going to be way late on the 8th of August if I'm the person that's elected or anybody else is going to be elected. You don't have a lot of time to stop any kind of train.
Thank you. Dr. McKenna?
I concur with what she said, and I had a different spin on it. We in District 1 can't afford to accept what they want to call equal treatment. Equal is not equitable, equal is not adequate. If I'm already behind and you give me the same thing you gave the other guy who's ahead of me, I can't catch it. Maybe I'm not supposed to catch it. If I'm in a race and you got 2 track shoes on and I'm barefoot, and I say, man, I can't catch up with you, 200 yards ahead of me. You say, well, here's a shoe, it's a flip-flop. Right? I got 1 flip-flop. I gave you something. I said, well, that's a flip-flop. He said, well, here's another one. I got 2 now, but I still have flip-flops. But he has absolved himself by saying, I gave you more than you had before. But I don't have adequacy. Being segregated in the South, I fought for equality. Then we went into equity, which means affirmative action, and they sure killed that. They found the appropriate Negro to say, no, we don't need that, it's a level playing field. But we never get the adequacy. Sufficient funding for the neediest children. That's what I'm talking about. She's right, the budget it drives everything. Without money, we're just talking and fussing, wishing and hoping, getting mad at each other, blaming each other. It's your fault. It's the union's fault. It's the administrator's fault. It's the parents' fault. It's poverty's fault. It's the gang's fault. It's the governor's fault. It's a whole lot of fault. The question is, who wants to be responsible? Who would take responsibility for saying, let's all get together and move towards getting adequate funding for these schools? We are, I think, 5th from the bottom of funding in the states, of 50 states, with the 2nd largest school district in the country. That's an abomination. But the deal is, there are a whole lot of people in LA Unified who believe in separatism. Charter schools are like that. Some of those people don't go to charter schools because the school is better. They don't get to sit next to some other people. That's what it's all about. I talked to some people the other day at Hamilton High. They go to these wonderful elementary schools. I said, well, where do you go to middle school? Well, we don't go to these schools. Do you go to Hamilton? Oh, no, there are too many kids in here. They're talking about too many kids from another neighborhood. Because if they live here, they can have the kids in that neighborhood go to that school. But when you go to the high school, you get kids from the other side of the street coming over here. They don't want to sit next to them. They know who they don't want to sit next to. Crenshaw and Dorsey are under-enrolled right now. Before I even ran for the board, when I retired, I was trying to figure out a way to get Crenshaw and Dorsey to work together. Because they're basically one school. They serve the same community. They're just 2 separate buildings. You can walk from Crenshaw to Dorsey with a good walk. Within 10 minutes, you can walk from one school to the other. I live right between them, and I worked at Dorsey. And so the issue about fairness and how do people want to come to Dorsey so that they can't wait to get to Dorsey. There are people living in Merck Park, can't wait to go to Westchester. They make sure they don't have to go to Dorsey. When we built Crenshaw High, the people west of Crenshaw, the African-American community said, we want to still go to Palisades and Union and Westchester, and we don't want to go to Crenshaw. Because guess who goes to Crenshaw? The people from the east side they're taken from Manning. That's not ethical at all, but they think that's fair. We still know how to separate ourselves from each other. We get on buses to avoid each other. And that's what has to be addressed. Can you stop it? Maybe not, but you got to fight it. Because it takes time to make people change their mind. And I said, make them change. Maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe they'll change if you keep showing the mirror and saying, is this really fair? Do you really want these undereducated children in your community? Are you safer if they're uneducated? Are you safer if they have disease? If you're safer if they don't get mental health services? Are you really safer As you just said, I keep myself safe by not living around them folks. All these miseducated, undereducated people, I'm sure glad I'm not them. I'm sure glad I'm not in their neighborhood. And the teachers in the neighborhood doing the best they can with insufficient resources. The budget has to be driven by need. And those with greatest need must get more resources. Otherwise, the rest of us will continue to be disadvantaged and be afraid of a certain part of our human population that only one power made it all happen. The only person with power, only power I know is the one that brought me here and the one that will take me out. Everybody else just has responsibility.
Thank you. Thank you. And to both of you, we thank you. A round of applause for our community and addressed us as intelligent people. We didn't let things slide. I think we understand a few things, and I want to thank you. And to the rest of you, the audience, this is the kind of thing I'm talking to parks like first time. And so Denver will be looking at possibly doing this more and gaining more of an audience. Yes?
I got an important question. Everything's based on money, no programming. I want you guys to tell me if you know the revenue per student this year, per student, the total $6-8 billion. And how many kids don't come to school every day and what that costs this district? And where that revenue stands in the average in the state and the nation. Do you guys know that?
Well, not off the top of my head, but I know how to find out.
No? Do you have a basic idea?
Well, I know it's in the millions, it's not in the billions.
No, per student.
Oh,
You mean how much is the average daily attendance?
is that what you're asking?
Is that what you're asking, George?
Well, I'm asking the difference between enrollment and ADA. Yeah, that's how many don't come to school every day, and that's how much money you lose.
So you're saying that for every youngster who doesn't come to school, how much money does the district lose of that $8,400?
That's one way, and when you add them all together, there's another number, and it's $3 billion.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's the total.
Okay, so what does a student, you guys are all saying, the average claptrap of California's money. Do you know how much more this district has and what its revenue per student is this year? That's the question. Per student.
What's the answer, George?
$12,536.
I don't know what happened.
More than 2,000 above the state average, above the national average. The district is not out of money. And nobody knows this budget because I bust those fools down there not knowing when $1 billion is misstated by the CFO and nobody in that room knows but me.
Okay.
So that's why I had to ask the question, because it's all theoretical talk unless you know those numbers. You can't, nobody's been in that budget unless you know those numbers.
George.
That bothers me.
George.
There's a $64 million shortfall in the district.
There ain't no shortfall at all. Where you get that from?
Yeah, there is.
Try to prove it to me, Genetha. Want to have some fun?
Yeah, because I've been out to Lakeville and looked at the budget.
Well, I tell you what, I got Lakeville right here because I've done every district in this county and I'm taking them out. Got news for you. I got the state numbers and I got the district budget, Genetha. I'm sorry, it's disturbing to me.
No, it's not disturbing.
Yes, it is, because nobody knows the money.
All right, but what happens is...
Nobody knows the money, dude.
Right, and I agree with you because...
How do you write a budget when they don't know?
Right, even the people holding the office don't really know. Even the people running the state don't really
Let me give you an example. I have on video DZ's #1 guy for LCFF. I asked him the question, have you ever read the original legislation? They had 62 people making $200,000 a year in that room for 58 parents. Only me and Yolandi Beckles had actually read the legislation. Okay. All they knew is talking points and PowerPoint.
The part asked me, actually, this is I love this kind of stuff. I'm going to have to sit and talk with him.
Well, I'm happy to show anybody how it really runs. They don't seem to care.
We have to close down because part...
You understand the importance of the question?
Before 8 o'clock, get out of here.
Yeah, okay.
So we want to thank you again, Dr. McKenna and Genetha, and the rest of you, thanks so much.
This was really, really good.
Where is everybody?
I mean, I've been videoing this so people can see. I went to the sheriff's. There were 48 people. There were 3 white. I videoed it. I mean, it's like, it's so disturbing what's going on. And it's stuff on the money. This is a joke. Look, I got them caught, like 110,000 ADA in the goddamn budget. You know what I mean? Don't talk about LA Unified like California. This is an extremely privileged, criminal district. It is an organized, I've been to a lot of lawyers. Big guys, okay? It's organized crime. This election is illegal.
Why is that?
It's against the 1975 AG opinion, backed up by 2 U.S. Supreme Court decisions with case law to 1868. I got it all.
What's the opinion?
Merrill versus Montecito. Supremacy of state law over city or county.
Right.
With a case law to 1868, Dillon's rule in 1876, the first Supreme Court decision, Merrill versus Montecito. 1891, reaffirmed in 1906. And guess what? She was at CSBA, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess who has the manual how to replace a school board member? Friggin' CSBA. Want to see it?
So, the manual on how to replace a school board member, you're saying that...
Use state law, not city.
Okay, use state law. So what is the city, by having this election...
They're using city code.
Oh, so what is the state code?
They're breaking every rule and regulation and how you even get anybody to even apply for it and everything else.
Well...
Want to see it?
Well, yes.
Look, man.
Hold on, but let's go...
You got every one of your preachers here blocks old and they know it and I know it.
Let's go to a little restroom. Hold on, I really do have to close the place down. Hold on.
Here, I'll just pull it out. good, guys. Thanks. You guys made it?